exceptional. Exceptional.
Paused. All right. What if the Cincinnati Reds signed Trea Turner? Now, before you shout no at the screen and turn off, bear with me because I've got a few thoughts as to how this could happen and what it would look like right here on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Live. Aloha and welcome to the Aloha Friday live edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we are free and available on all platforms, including right here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us live today. I'm your host, Stephen Offenbaker, alongside Jeff Carr, and we have a passion for baseball. We have a passion for the Cincinnati Reds, and we have taken that passion and we've turned it into information for you. On today's podcast, Jeff wants to spend money, and it's not his money he wants to spend. He wants to spend Bob Castellini's money. Also, later in the show, you are going to take control of the show. You are going to be in the driver's seat with your questions and comments. So let's hear from you in the comment section starting right now. It is open. We will take some of your questions and comments all along the way before we put you in the driver's seat for the rest of the show. Now, as Jeff mentioned up top, he wants to spend some of Bobby's money, and I don't know if Jeff Carr had some bad sushi last night or what happened. This sounds like an indigestion-driven dream, but Jeff, you have a plan.
I have a plan, Steve. And yes, I know this sounds a little bit far-fetched for a team that we do not think is going to spend very much this offseason. We have said that the Reds' budget for free agency trades or whatever probably is around $20 to $25 million, maybe $30 million if you stretch it a little bit, because after everything's said and done, when you're looking at the arbitration, when you're looking at the different deals that the Reds have on the books currently, they're probably talking about $89 million for the team before they make any moves whatsoever. That is about $30 million from where they were last year. And I don't think that they're just going to sit on their hands. And we've been talking about, okay, they can make a flurry of moves. They can add this guy. They can add this guy. What if they made a splash move? What if they went out and they got Trea Turner? Now, the first thing that we'll talk about is $30 million is probably what it's going to take for Trea Turner alone, maybe $33 million for the Reds to sign him. And you're also talking about convincing him to come here and play for the Reds and not play for a bona fide contender. But hear me out. That contract for Joey Votto is coming off the books this year. They're not going to give him that $20 million option. I think we all understand that. He's probably got to play out of his way over his skis and maybe then some for the Reds to even consider giving $20 million more to Joey Votto. So their biggest contract comes off the books. Mike Moustakas off the books. They will have no money on the books for 2024. So what if they made that big splash signing this year? You've got shortstop talent coming up through the system with Elly De La Cruz. You've got a guy that I believe can play third base in Noelvi Marte. The question's going to be at second base. Matt McLain hasn't really started playing there yet. You could play Trea Turner at second base and have that spot in your infield set for the next 6, 7, 8 years.
Whew. Wow. I think that, first of all, the Reds could afford to do this. Let's not pretend that they cannot. They can. They will not. You're absolutely right with the budget figures. They're in the mid 80s to almost $90 million in committed payroll. They probably have $20 to $30 million to spend. It will probably take $20 to $30 million to sign Trea Turner. He's going to want to play for a winner, and that ain't what's going to be happening here in Cincinnati in 2023. On top of that, if they were to do this, Jeff, you don't get a backup catcher unless Trea Turner's playing backup catcher. You don't get bullpen help unless Trea Turner is going to do that as well. You have to take that $30 million and fill all of these needs. We've already talked so far since the season ended that they need to go out and get some relief pitchers. They need to go out and get an outfielder or two. They need to go out and get a backup catcher. You want to shoot the whole budget on like a trip to Ruby's Steakhouse when we really need a month eating at McDonald's to make the budget work. I can't see how this is going to play out. I really feel like there's probably a higher likelihood of me going out on a date with Gal Gadot tonight than there is for the Reds spending any kind of money relatively close to this.
But also think about it this way. You could pitch to him, you're the face of the franchise as soon as you get here, period. He takes over. He is the top guy. And he can be the leader of this team as they come back to prominence. Yes, I know that seems a little bit hollow, but hear me out on that. You're talking about a historic franchise that has historically gone through a stretch in which they've been inept and absolutely to the point where fans are starting to leave. They're starting to go root for other teams. They're starting to, take up Phil Castellini on his bet, on his dare of where else are you going to go, and they're going everywhere else. You sign Trea Turner, you bring some of those fans back. And you have a guy that can anchor a lineup, because we're starting to wonder. I think we believe that Tyler Stephenson can be that, but we have questions about his health. We're wondering about what Jonathan India is going to be for this team as we move forward. We're hoping that Ellie De La Cruz, Noel V. Marte, Matt McLean, Reese Hines, all these guys can pan out. You've got a guy that's panned out already. You've got a guy who's worth the money. Go get that guy, and he can be the face of the team and take pressure off of everyone else. The thing of it is, and I think that we all do this when we say a big name player and we say, there's no way that the Reds can go out and get this guy. But I think that the Reds should consider a splash move. Just the fact that we can talk about the Reds and that they would absolutely just poo-poo the idea of making a splash move before even exploring it, I think is just the saddest thing in the world. And if the Reds don't do that, then why are they owning a professional franchise?
Well, that's the question we've been asking for a while now. Now, look, I hear your thought process on a splash move, something big to bring the fans back in. And listen, the comment section right now, Jeff, is not loving your pitch here. Let's roll through a few of these. Ryan says, good luck with spending that money. I think I feel kind of that way too. Our buddy Scott Campbell is asking, do you have a plan or just 12% of a plan?
It's probably 12% of a plan.
Probably 12% of a plan. And Wolfpack is, are you suggesting actually winning games will help convince people to come to the games and buy merch? That's crazy talk. Lock him up. Yeah. Here's the thing, Jeff. Even if they were going to go make a splash signing, I don't think this is the right splash signing. There's a couple things just off the top of my head about Trea Turner that would make me reluctant to throw the kind of money at him that you're talking about. It would take a long-term deal to lock him up. He's not coming here on a $30 million 1-year deal. He's going to want a long-term deal. It'd be his age 30 season. And while he's been good, his OPS plus is 122. Now that's a good, but for the Reds to commit that kind of money, they don't need good. They need great. They need a game changer in the lineup. And I think Trea Turner could help make a team into a winner, but he can't lug the Cincinnati Reds onto his shoulders and make them the winner.
It's possible. It's something that I think the Reds should actually see. And Corey, that's not a bad idea. Justin Turner over Trea Turner. I love Justin Turner, and he would be a great bat in the middle of the lineup. You could slot him in at third base right away, and probably would cost less than Trea Turner too. But I think that's where this conversation should be had, is what is the splash move? Because I feel like we've been talking about realistic moves that we would like to see the Reds make, but talk about how much a fan base would just completely transform overnight, because there's fans out there that are begging the Reds to do anything that will make them excited for next year. Because as of right now, I feel like all of our collective feelings on this Reds team is we will be excited if they don't lose 100 games. And that's nothing to get excited about. That's like saying we really hope that this plane that we're getting on doesn't crash when we go from A to B. Like, that's all that we're hoping for with this team. Give us something more to look forward to, because yes, prospects are exciting. Yes, seeing Noel V. Marte mash in Arizona is absolutely exciting. I just had to play that one more time because I still haven't, taken it off of our brand list here. But when you talk about what the Reds could do to get people excited, Trea Turner is the kind of move that would absolutely get people excited. 4.9 wins above replacement last year. For his career, a 122 OPS plus. You're telling me he would not go off in Great American Ballpark? He could be that guy that you slot into the 3-hole right ahead of Tyler Stephenson. Bam, the middle of your order is set for multiple years, and you don't have to worry about whether or not something's going to pan out.
Jeff, I think that, it sounds amazing, but I think you were much more on track when you talked about a Corey Kluber type signing. If the Reds are going to make a quote unquote splash, I've dubbed this the press conference guy. If they're going to go sign somebody that will warrant calling a press conference at GABP and have the guy down there holding up his jersey and all that stuff, it's going to be the careful combination of a name that people recognize, but lower dollars. And it's going to be a Kluber type signing, a signing of where the casual baseball fan will be like, oh, I know who that guy is, but the Reds aren't going to have to pay $30 million a year to get him. I think that's the kind of signing that they are going to be looking for.
It would, I mean, the $33 million would like double their record signing because Moose and Castellanos were the record signings. So that would double their value. So probably not. But I just want to take a look at this and do this exercise because I feel like the Reds should explore a splash move and not just be constantly saying, no, we're not even looking at them. At least take a look at what it could do for your franchise, because you bring a dude in like Trea Turner and you slot him in at second base, you move India to left field, you can really start to see some things playing out. But that's, I just wanted, it's probably not going to happen. I do acquiesce to that. And yes, Scott, this is probably 12% of a plan, but I think that it's 12% that the Reds aren't even going for right now. And they need to at least explore 12% of an idea like this. But Steve, I've got a question for you, because if we're not going to do this, if we're not going to make a splash move with this money, what if we use this money to lock up a couple of dudes this season?
I would be much more on board with that.
And we're going to explore that coming up here in just a moment. But Steve, I wanted to also take a look at this because our friends over at BetOnline have the odds for the World Series MVP. And right now the favorite is probably the guy that I would pick. Now, Jeremy Pena is at plus 115 right now on the VIG. So you could still get a tiny bit of value for him, but he's far and away favored than any other player when you're looking at the guys in this World Series. He single-handedly won Game 5 for the Astros. He single-handedly is the reason that they're going back to Houston up 3-2. So I think that it's obvious that he is the front runner for the World Series MVP. Who's your pick right now?
You know, I am reluctant to pick anybody for Houston because I really think that the Phillies are going to pull this out. They're going to go down to Houston and shock the world. I think that's what's going to happen. I still stand by my prediction that this goes 7 games and that somebody wins it in extra innings. I think Bryce Harper wins the World Series for the Phillies in Game 7 in extra innings. You know, obviously it won't be a walk-off because they're in Houston, but he's going to give them the go-ahead run. I will take Bryce Harper and his plus 750 action over at BetOnline to be the World Series MVP.
And if you want to check out the World Series MVP odds, or any other odds for that matter, head on over to betonline.net, because they've got you covered for the World Series. They've got you covered for the NFL regular season, NBA, NHL, college basketball starting up next week, college football, of course, raging on. So much is going on. Tomorrow, huge matchup, Georgia and Tennessee. I'm going to be all over that over at betonline.net, and you can be too, because they've got point spreads, they've got money lines, they've got over-unders, they've got prop bets, they've got it all at betonline.net, because they've got you covered with every single sport. And you can check them out on your desktop or mobile device today. That's betonline.net, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thanks so much for joining us here on this live edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. If you have not seen us this offseason, we are here every day, Monday through Friday, all the way up through the winter meetings, as we're covering what the Reds are doing, what the Reds could be doing, and what the Reds should be doing to get better for 2023. They just had their second season ever of 100 losses. Let's make that the only season for the longest time, maybe ever, maybe the rest of our lives as Reds fans anyway. Hopefully they can continue to get better, and you can check us out every single day right here on our YouTube page or on your favorite podcasting app. Just make sure that you're subscribed. That way you get everything that we've got coming for you, lots of content throughout this off season. All right, Steve, as much as I want to be the guy that's right about Trea Turner happening, probably not going to be that way, but what if they took that money? Because we've been talking about 20, 30, something like that, $1 million. And what, they could plug some holes, they could add some guys and things like that. What if they locked up a couple of guys? Because I would tend to believe, if you're telling me the Reds could sign Corey Kluber for a year, or they could lock up Nick Lodolo, or they could lock up Tyler Stephenson for 5-6 years, something like that, I think I'd be more excited about that.
See, now you're moving in a direction that makes sense to me and gets me excited. We've talked about that they're not going to be able to sign all of this young talent, and there's going to be some heartbreak coming in about 6 seasons when they have flipped some of these guys on down the road. We know it's going to happen if they stick with the business model that they said they're going to go with moving forward, which is much more like the Tampa model of churning the roster, bringing in the prospects. But you do have to lock up a guy or two. I would much rather see them spend the money and lock up one of the pitchers. And I mean, I don't know which one you pick right now based on the one season. I mean, it would be Lodolo. Really. It would be Lodolo right now if based on just what we saw this season. Ashcraft. But I don't know that that's the good bet. I think maybe it's another year of, you wait till the end of year 2 and decide which one of the pitchers it would be with that. But, we've talked about it being Stephenson or India. I think that our recent India conversations in comparison to our recent Stephenson conversations say that you and I would both probably prefer it would be Stephenson over India if they were going to lock up one of the position player guys.
Or could they even do something like what the Braves have done or what the White Sox did with Eloy Jimenez years ago, where they locked him up before they even called him up? Could they lock up Elly De La Cruz for 6, 7, 8 years? Maybe, because you're talking about a dude that those 8 years would be very valuable, and you would just have him. Like you would have him at a deal that right now to him probably seems amazing, but maybe in 5 years looks amazing for the Reds. I think that this is a question too, and I'd be interested for our community here on Facebook, or if you're watching us on Twitter or something like that, hit us up on Twitter. You can hit us up at Locked On Reds, but of course also our host handles, as you see right here on the screen, at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs and at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs. Which would you rather them do? Would you rather them fill out this roster, plug in the holes with some different dudes like Corey Kluber? Maybe they bring back Tucker Barnhart as a catcher, something like that. Or would you be more excited if they locked up some of these dudes a la the Atlanta Braves? Because if you remember that list, and I wish I had that ready to bring up right here, the Atlanta Braves have dudes locked up for multiple years. Like I think their first free agent is Max Fried, and it's not going to be until 2025.
The comment section is just itching to get in on this, Jeff. They want to lock people up. They want to make some signings. Let's dig into to a few of these because we've talked about a few of them, but I'm going to go back into our splash move conversation from the top segment. We're just going to start working our way through these, and it looks like everybody's itching to talk today, so this may fill out the rest of the show with the question and comments. Again, we are live here on YouTube. This is my favorite thing to do, these live shows, for the interaction. So let's just jump into some of these. Wolfpack, he says, if they are going to make a splash move, should it be at a position that the farm has no thoroughbreds in waiting? Yes, absolutely. That's why I'm saying it's got to be a recognizable name at an affordable deal, and it's probably going to be pitching. I think that's going to be the deal, because really I think they go out and do a FAM, not actually Tommy Pham, but a FAM type signing, a 1-year deal on a guy that's looking to, show that he still has it, and Great American Ballpark lends itself to that. I think they do that for a position player. I think they're going to go out and spend some money on a name to be the 4th starter in this rotation behind the rookies. That's what I think, Jeff.
Let's pretend for a moment, too, we take the splash move and we move it to the outfield, and not necessarily Aaron Judge. The Reds, even if the Reds did spend all of their money on Aaron Judge, they still wouldn't afford him. He's probably going to get like $40 million, $50 million a year. So that's not going to happen. But what if it's like Jock Peterson? What if they go out and they get a guy like that? What if they go out and they make a move for Andrew Benintendi?
That's the next name in the list. JD says it's not going to happen. They wouldn't pick up the phone to spend $20 million a year on Nick Castellanos. And
it's true.
It's a very true statement. And then, the comment section is way ahead of you, Jeff. LG says if the Reds are going to sign a free agent, let it be Andrew Benintendi. That you really like him. You've brought him up a few times now.
He's a dude that you have the local edge. I think that there's something to bringing in a local guy. Like I low-key was kind of hoping they could go after like Ian Happ or something maybe in a year or two, just to bring him in and maybe, if he just going to kill us, maybe just join us and we can stop worrying about that. But Andrew Benintendi brings a lot of talent to the table. He's a good fielder, has a good bat. I think that he had a weird thing there in New York City that I just think, yeah, Ian Happy, I'm sure. But he just had a weird thing in New York City. I think he's a good player, and I think that he could be, if you're wanting to make a splash and in a position of need, Andrew Benintendi could be that guy. But again, you sign Andrew Benintendi, you're probably only making one more move, because I don't think he takes as much as Trea Turner, but he probably still takes close to 20, maybe 18.
Yeah. And I still struggle to see them putting that big a contract on the books. I think that the Castellinis, Big Boy Bob and son of Bob, the SOB himself, Phil Castellini. I think they're just salivating at the idea of Votto's contract coming off the books and them being able to buy a new jet. I don't see them being willing to put a big contract like that. But listen, Corey agrees with me. He says, to be honest, if the Reds do make a free agent signing splash, I would prefer it to be pitching. Then he says, my fanboy heart would love to see Cueto back. We've talked about this. I would love to see Cueto back as well. The problem is, and yes, Wolfpack, they probably could have had Cueto last year for less than they paid Mike Minor, but Johnny Cueto just went into Chicago and showed that he still got it, and he's going to get, he's not going to get top flight starting pitcher money, but he's going to get decent money, and I don't know that the Reds are going to be willing to pay it. Would I like to see him back?
That would be a reunion I'd be happy to see. Yeah, I'd be happy to see. I kind of wonder if it's going to be like around 11 million for him. I don't think it's going to be cheaper than what he made last year. I think he's going to get paid somewhere. The other thing about it is I think he's going to get paid by a World Series, a team with World Series aspirations next year. And I think he'll choose that over the Reds simply because he's coming toward the end of his career as well.
I'm not going to read this one for the audio feed, but I'm just going to leave it up on the screen for a minute. Chris Schreiner is willing to donate body parts to get Tucker Barnhart back.
I would love to see that too. I mean, I love Tucker.
Leave it at that.
I love Tucker. And if we're willing to spend, and I think that this is another question too, if we're willing to spend money on a big splash move, shouldn't we be willing to spend money on Corey Kluber and Tucker Barnhart? I think that would.
I think so. Scott Campbell agreeing that he would like to see him use the Braves model, like you're saying, Jeff. I think there's something to that. I think the Reds could do that. I think they could afford to do that, even with Castellini's crying poor. I think they could afford to do that. The thing you have to accept, though, is that there's a lot of risk with that. So if they do go, let's just say, the stars align and they give Ellie De La Cruz big money before he has ever seen a big league pitcher. There's some risk with that, but I mean, we've seen Ellie tattoo every level of baseball that he's faced so far, but there's still no guarantee that that's going to be the case when he reaches the major leagues. So if you want them to adopt that motto, you also have to be willing to accept that there will be some guys come along that will have big money tied up in them that don't pan out, which is going to limit a team like the Reds from doing other things down the road. So you have to be willing to accept the risk in order to gain that reward.
And I'd be interested, and we'll definitely explore this more next week, but taking an in-depth look at some of the deals that they make, because obviously Acuna's had injury issues, Ozzy Albies has had injury issues, Spencer Strider, he pitched like 15 games, they gave him a long-term deal, and then he was an iffy dude for the playoffs because of injuries as well. So I'd be interested to see that, but we're definitely still talking about that, and coming up here in a minute, we'll take a few more questions from everybody as we look forward to this Reds offseason and seeing what they will do. Sorry. Before we do that, though, want to let you know that you can follow us on Twitter at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can follow Steve at S. Offenbaker, and make sure that you're following us here on YouTube and you have that bell clicked to get notified whenever we have new content for you. Plenty of stuff coming for you this off season. We're hoping for a couple of big name guests, a couple of folks that will give us a little bit more insight into Reds baseball and kind of how the operations move along. We'll be talking, of course, with beat writers like Bobby Nightingale. We'll try and get Mark Sheldon back on here and some different guys like that who will give us their take as to how they see the Reds offseason playing out, because I think that in some cases it can be a little bit black and white, Steve, where we look at, yes, this is the number that they could add and maybe that they go after this guy, but I'm sure that there's more to it than that.
Do you have any here's a question from JD, Jeff, and see if you have any thoughts on that. How about a guy like Chris Bassett to solidify the rotation, $12 million ish? Okay. I mean, that's
very good in Oakland. Yeah.
Very good in Oakland. $12 million. Okay. I think that's in a range that you could consider the Reds feeling comfortable with for making a splash signing. I mean, yeah, I would, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, I don't think.
And I think they need to prioritize, pitchers like Chris Bassett who do have very good control and they're very good at limiting the walks, because we're going to have a lot of guys coming up. And, even Hunter Greene and Nick Lodolo and Graham Ashcraft are going to go through their periods of struggle where it seems like they're having a hard time hitting the strike zone and throwing some good pitches in there. But if we could get a stabilizing force like Chris Bassett there at the end of the rotation in the 4 or the 5 spot, I'd be all for that.
I'm gonna take a question here from Tate Boys, despite the fact that he has a Steelers logo in his little picture there. That breaks my Bengals loving heart. But he says he sides with just kind of suck it up and roll out all the young guys and let them grow together. Also thinks that Greene and Lodolo are must keeps. What do you think about that, Jeff? What if they just are like, screw it, call everybody up all together, let them learn and grow and figure it out as a collective group? What about that?
I do sort of want to see them exercise caution with some guys. Like, I don't think Noelvi Marte is ready. I think that you've got to have him get a little bit more time at third base there in the minor leagues, AAA especially, and make sure that he's comfortable there. Now, Ellie De La Cruz is a guy that I'm comfortable with doing that. Like, if he is on the opening day roster, I'm not going to be that surprised. But we have seen what happens when you bring up guys too early. Jose Barrero is our most recent example of that, and they brought him up too early in 2020, and it just feels like it did something to his development clock, if you will. Like it spun it too fast, and now he's having trouble keeping up. And maybe he can figure it out. Maybe he can find out something with his prowess at the plate this upcoming year, but it felt like it's even started to affect his defense. Like, we know he's got range, we know he's got the arm, we know he's got the speed, but I felt like there were plays last year where you just watch him and he just had mental lapses and he just wasn't always there and present for the play that he had to make. There were, ground balls that he approaches from the side and it just goes under his glove and into the outfield. Different things that he's making obvious mistakes with. And I think that it all just continued to compound on itself, and you kind of wonder what we're going to get, if anything, out of Jose Barrero at this point. Because I tend to side with Chris Welsh in that the Reds shouldn't just give up on him now, but I have a hard time believing that they're just going to hand him the shortstop position out of the spring training.
Yeah, I don't think it's his job at this point. I think he's going to have to go take it. I wonder about this, Jeff. I believe that Jose Barrero is a guy that's stuck in his own head. I think that you're correct. They brought him up too early. He's probably hearing a lot of different voices telling him to try a lot of different things to fix what is wrong with his batting, to fix what is wrong with his development. But, there's another guy that we saw that had the same situation, got stuck in his head, and that's Jake Fraley. And he went down to the minor leagues, and he openly has talked about the fact that he actually sought out some professional assistance to guide him through being stuck in his head and these thoughts and all of the mental fatigue that these baseball players seem to deal with. You hear that a lot and you think, yeah, it's just a game that they're playing. But I imagine there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of dollars and a lot of pressure involved with playing this sport. And, a lot of people react to pressure differently. I would love to see the Reds get Jose Barrero a guy. Whoever Jake Fraley's guy was, let's get that guy to talk to Jose Barrero and see if maybe they can help him through whatever it is that's going on in a non-baseball way. Maybe they can help him just get his head right so that he can attack the sport better.
And there's something too, and real quick before we take one more question, is that, I always think of this quote, and it's not a baseball quote, it's a John Madden quote, but he's just like, 90% of the game is half mental. And it's like, yeah, that comment sounds a little bit strange and completely John Madden-esque and like out of left field, and it doesn't make any sense at all, but it just shows you how much is on these guys' minds as they're playing this game. Like, especially baseball, I think, is even more mental than some other sports, because when you get stuck in that slump, your mind is just, it feels like you're in quicksand. So I think that this is something that it's going to be interesting to see how, if he can come out of this for Jose Barrero. And that's with anybody that I think comes up to the major leagues, is that you have to break through the barrier of what it means to be a major leaguer. And then you got to figure out how to then continuously be a major leaguer day in and day out. Because as we saw with even Aristides Aquino, just because you have a really good first month doesn't mean the rest of your career isn't going to be pretty crappy.
Yeah, and I really don't want to end on Aristides Aquino talk, Jeff, but that is where you've left us. Let's go with Scott. Here we go, because you've had some thoughts about this. We'll take this one last question before we get out of here. Do the Reds make a free agent signing before Reds Fest? We have talked about this a little bit, but you and I have differing opinions. What do you think?
I think they should. I think what's going to happen, though, is it's going to be like a Travis Jankowski sign. It's not going to be something that is a PR move. It's not going to be something that moves the needle. It's not going to be a guy that they're like, oh my gosh, they signed him and he's coming to Red Sox. Oh my gosh, I want to meet him. It's going to be a, depth move if they make a move at all.
Mother Goose checks in, says, just wanted to say you guys do an amazing podcast. I'm a fan of another NL Central team and yet enjoy the heck out of your content. Love your passion. Keep up the good work. Thank you for that.
Thanks,
Appreciate being here. This is why we love the lives. We love the fan interaction. To Scott Campbell's question, do they make a signing? I think this is where we talked about the Corey Kluber deal. If they do make a signing, it'd have to be a budget signing for a recognizable name. Somebody that's looking to squeeze another summer or two out of the game before they call it a career, but a name that the casual fan might recognize and might want to come out to Reds Fest to see. I would be... That's not the name. All right. See, we were doing so good. We were going to wrap it up on a positive. Jesus, Jeff, wrap up the show.
Thanks, everybody, for checking out this Aloha Friday live edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Now, go check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast as host Peter Bukowski takes a look at all of the big news and sports stories and recaps and different transactions and all the different rumors that are happening around sports that move the needle. That's Locked On Sports Today. Just like Locked On Reds, it's free and available on all platforms, including right here on YouTube. Steve, the Reds clearly have some moves that they need to make this offseason. They need to get better. What's that mean for you and me?
Well, after today, it means you are clearly not getting a job in the Reds front office. So you and I are going to pay attention to what the front office is doing. We will monitor the transaction news from around the league and keep you updated about all of the action that the Reds may or may not do, because we're going to be Locked On Reds every single day.